All right, so today we are installing the 4Runner ladder onto our 4Runner. Now, I know when it comes to ladders, it's sort of become like a running meme in the overland community, right? Like we look at it like, oh, look at that person with a ladder. I get it because it can be laughable. I actually saw somebody one time with a ladder and no roof rack. Like, what are you stepping up there to get? Now, personally, I'm not really a ladder kind of person. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but for us, it's a necessity because we are very, very short people. We use the 4Runner roof rack a ton to carry all of our cargo, and as we all know, the 4Runner doesn't really have great ways of being able to reach higher to the middle area of your roof rack. I mean, you can open your doors and kind of step up that way. They even sell those little devices. They're little portable ones that you hook onto the hinge of your doors and step up even more. But in the rear, there's no way to do that. I mean, you can step on the bumper. That doesn't really give you much. You can step on the cargo area, but you would have to open the tailgate to do that. And now that prevents you from grabbing stuff in the rear of your roof rack. So I needed a way to grab some stuff from the rear of our roof rack where we carry a lot of our stuff, like fuel and propane tanks and whatever else is back there. This ladder should help with that as much as it can sometimes be laughable, but I don't even care. We're doing this for necessity, and that's why we're installing one today. All right, so let me not do too much talking. Let's go ahead and get this thing on the vehicle. As you can see, it's already assembled. So let me rewind and show you guys how I assembled this. Now, it's always good practice to lay out all the parts before you do your install, just to make sure you're not missing anything. Fortunately, there's not really a lot when it comes to this ladder, but I'm gonna go ahead and walk you through it so you can see what comes with this kit. So obviously you get your instructions, you get the sides of the ladder, there's two parts to that. You get the top of the ladder, the bottom of the ladder, the 3 steps for the ladder, and then you get this plate here that will attach to your tailgate, to which the bottom of the ladder will attach to. And then obviously you get your hardware. Separate these also. Get them all laid out so you can find it easy, and also to make sure you have everything. It should have been inspected and signed off on by 4Runner. But that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and assemble this so we can get it on the runner. To assemble the ladder, attach the side pieces to the top bracket with the M6x16 button head bolts and nylock nuts. Just don't tighten it yet. Now we attach the 2-step brackets in the middle with the flat side facing the front of the ladder using the M6 thread forming screws. They will drill themselves into the step brackets, so try keeping it straight. Drill them only about halfway just to get it started, then turn it over and repeat on the other side. Once they're in place, you can go ahead and drill them down completely. Moving on to the bottom, attach the bottom bracket with the same M6x16 button head bolts and nylock nuts you used at the top. There are 2 holes on each side at the bottom, and you'll need to put these bolts through the top holes. Again, keep it loose. Now add the 3rd step bracket and use the M6 thread forming screws into the bottom hole. Once all the steps have been secured, you can now tighten up the top and bottom bolts. After it's all been assembled, make sure to cover all 6 exposed bolts with the plastic caps. Alright, so here is the ladder fully assembled. All the bolts have been tightened and secured. Word of advice, any areas that have those exposed bolts, use the plastic caps and cover them. I got lazy with the Jeep roof rack a long time ago, and I'm like, I'm not going to put these caps on, it's fine. Only to find those bolts rusted out later. These caps will help prevent these bolts from rusting out, so make sure you use them. Just cover them all up. There's 2 on the bottom and 4 up at the top, so get those covered. I did have to readjust the top bracket to the side brackets because I had everything loose and I didn't realize that it was kind of off, and when I tightened it, the side and the bracket were kind of cockeyed a little bit, and I thought maybe that's just how it is so that it'll line up to the runner, but no, it's supposed to just flow nice and smooth all the way through. If you notice that, there's no kind of part that's sticking up, so make sure that everything kind of flows really smoothly. All right, so the steps have been added with the flat side facing towards the front. Now, I'm hoping that's how it is because these steps are triangular shaped. And if I was a betting man, I don't think that the narrow side of those steps would be what's facing towards the front, because when you're stepping, you don't want to be stepping on something that's thin towards the front and thicker towards the back, right? I would guess it's the flat side that's going towards the front. I tried to look at the instructions, but I really couldn't tell what orientation they had it. I'm hoping it's right like this because I don't want to have to take this apart and reassemble it. But anyway, I guess we'll find out. Let's just get this thing on the vehicle. To mount the ladder to the vehicle, the first thing we need to do is measure 100 millimeters or about 4 inches from the inside edge of the spoiler trim as you see here. Mark the area with tape. I drew an arrow to make sure I remember which side that 4 inches falls on. Now would be a good time to clean up the area of dirt and dust to prepare it for the adhesive later. After that, hook the ladder to the edge of the tailgate and let the rest go down to the rear of the vehicle. After making sure it's straight, I mark that spot with tape as well. Now remove the ladder, lift the tailgate, and then pop out the handle on the left side. Now take the bottom mounting plate and position it on the bottom lip of the tailgate so that the left edge of it lines up with the tape you put earlier. Just eyeball it as best you can and then press the bracket up against the door so the tailgate lip sits inside the slot. Now mark where the holes are at the bottom. Starting with a smaller drill bit, drill some pilot holes, then use a step-up bit to enlarge them to about the same size as the holes on the bottom mounting plate. As good practice, I always like to use touch-up paint on the holes that I drilled out. Back over to the workbench, we need to assemble the inside plate by attaching the M6 cage nuts to it. Now slide this plate inside the tailgate with the flat side facing the holes you drilled. Now here's where it can get a bit tricky. You'll need to maneuver the bottom mounting plate so that the holes line up, and then you'll need to insert M6 by 35 button head bolts through the bottom mounting plate and through the tailgate and into that inner plate. It can get tough trying to maneuver it all, but I found it easier to start with the end closest to the opening and then just pivoting the inner plate until the holes line up. Once you have all 3 bolts started, go ahead and tighten them down. Now remove the adhesive backing on the ladder itself, then position it back to where you marked it earlier. Try not to let the adhesive stick too much right now. When we tighten this later, the adhesive will press itself onto the vehicle. Now comes the hardest part of the install. You'll notice the bottom of the ladder is very far from the bottom plate. This is on purpose as we are now going to clamp it down for a tight fit. Using the long M8 by 45 bolt in the kit, put it through one of the holes in the back of the ladder and through a spacer. Now push up on the bottom plate until the bolt goes through it enough for you to get the nut started. From here we start the clamping process. Begin tightening the bolts, allowing the bottom plate and the ladder to meet. When it gets close enough, go ahead and put the shorter M8 by 30 button head bolts into the remaining 3 holes with a spacer in between the ladder and the bottom plate. Working in a crisscross pattern, begin wrenching the bolts and nuts to bring the plate and ladder together. You'll notice as you tighten one, the others will loosen. Keep repeating until they've come together fully, then remove the long bolt you started with and replace it with the remaining shorter bolt. Now you just have to tighten it all up, cover the exposed bolts with the plastic caps, and you're done.
So as you may have noticed, this ladder is a lot thinner than other ladders. When my wife saw it, she was even like, that looks a little small.
Oh, look at that person with a ladder.
And honestly, that was my concern as well. But now that I look at it, and I'm not trying to be biased here, I actually like that it's thinner. At the end of the day, all I'm really using this ladder for is to be able to reach stuff on the roof rack, and I don't need something wide that I'm going to be stepping up on. I just need a little boost. And eventually, we're going to be getting a rear bumper with some swing outs on this 4Runner, and having a ladder that's a little bit thinner and doesn't stick out too much will just give it a much better and simplified look in the back with all the swing outs and all the stuff that we're going to put on that. In the words of my friend Woody, I like that this looks tactical. But despite that this ladder is pretty thin, I like that the overall look of it is a bit thicker. I like them thick. I don't know, I like this beefier look to this versus something that just looks kind of like a rinky-dink ladder. And on top of that, because it's front runner, it matches our roof rack like perfectly. Install was super easy. You do have to drill some holes, but fortunately those holes are at the bottom of your tailgate so you'll never see them. And if you decide to remove the ladder at some point, you can just plug up those holes with some caps or whatever, and no one will ever be the wiser. Now the whole clamping process was a bit difficult because when you put the ladder down, the bottom of that ladder is actually pretty far from that bottom plate, and you have to get that long bolt and start clamping it together. And I get why they're doing this, because by doing it this way, you are literally tightening that ladder to the tailgate so it doesn't move. My advice, get that long bolt, put it through one of the holes in the back, and just start clamping it till those two areas get close enough for the other three bolts to go in. Once they're close enough, go ahead and put the other three bolts, don't forget the spacers in between, and then work in a cross thread pattern, because as you tighten one, the others will loosen and so forth until the whole thing kind of just comes together. And then after you get that secured, then this ladder is not going anywhere. But anyway, yeah, that's it. That's the ladder. I do have plans to maybe modify this so I can put a propane tank on it. If I do that, I will make sure to put up a video to show you guys how I DIY that thing. But otherwise, not really much else left for me to say about a ladder. But if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and also hit that notification bell so we can let you be informed of whenever we release new videos. And if it moves you, please support us on Patreon. It'll give you access to our live streams, as well as it gives you access to our videos earlier than everyone else. And as always, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Baptism Overland. My name is Asia Sampson, and I will see you next time.